Hi folks, thanks for tuning into Wine and Food and Two Riders. Today's subject is port wine. I'm going to go over a little bit of everything and pretty quickly. This is not going to be a deep dive down into everything, but it'll give you a starting point. Port wine is a fortified wine. That means it's wine that has had a neutral grape spirit added to it. In some cases, you might call what's added grape or brandy, in the translation burning water or fire water, which is kind of like grappa, but not too much of a strong flavor to it, just a lot of alcohol. Port is the region a little bit, well, the town of Port, or Oporto, is down pretty much on the coast, but if you go maybe to the east 100 kilometers, that's the Douro Valley, and that's where most of the port wine grapes are grown. A lot of wine grown in Portugal is not sweetened wine. It's not fortified. It's dry reds and dry whites. A lot of those are very excellent, and most of them don't leave the country. But port is a kind of a special situation that developed between Britain and Portugal when Britain was at war with France a couple hundred years ago. They got cut off from their good French Bordeaux's and Burgundies, and they wanted to go somewhere else relatively nearby for good wine. It ended up being Portugal. What you have is grapes and grape juice that's usually harvested at a certain level of sugar, which will normally develop a certain amount of alcohol if you let all the sugar ferment to alcohol. In the case of port, that's not done. The grapes are probably picked at around 21 degrees Brix up to around 24 degrees Brix. If you divide that 24 in half and add 2, that would usually give you 12 plus 2. 24 degree Brix would normally yield about a 14% alcohol wine. What they do in Portugal is they will pick the grapes. In a lot of cases, at a lot of the port houses, stomp the grapes. And I'll give you a picture of that. People put on shorts and wash their legs and feet nicely, and they crush the grapes by walking all around in these tanks. What that does is breaks the grape open, squeezes the juice out, but their feet are soft enough, your skin is soft enough that even with all the weight on your heel and all, it doesn't crush the seeds inside. And if you break those seeds, you pick up some bitter flavors in the wine. So they still, in some of the better port houses, they get all partied up and put on some music and do the chicken dance across the inside of big glass vats. You don't see that much or hear about it in discussions about port, but they still do it, very traditional. So we've got a few different candidates here today. The first one I'm going to start with is Ruby Port. And I want to give you a good piece of practical knowledge. That is that the last chance these folks have to market to you is on the back of the label. You don't see a lot of fancy stuff, pictures of dogs or people in a surfboard or any stuff like that. Those wines in the store are brands. They're not really wineries or true vineyards. They're just made-up brands. These port houses, most of them have been in business for more than 100 years. There's a couple different families that will marry, so it might be called Graham's, but it might be made by, I believe this is bottled by the Simonton family, but the families usually ended up intermarrying. These have been very stable for a long time. Like I said, the last chance they've got to market to you is on the back of the bottle. And I'll read to you what's on the back of this one. This Ruby Port is wine that has been fermented so that you start off with about 24 Brix, and now it's gone down to about 10 Brix. And that would yield an extra 5% alcohol. But instead, at that time, a bunch of brandy, about 20% of the volume. If you've got 80 gallons of wine, you throw in about 20 gallons of the brandy. that raises the alcohol, kills the yeast that's fermenting the sugars, and it doesn't ferment anymore, but it jacks the alcohol up quite a bit. With Ruby, the Ruby is done and then stored for 2 to 3 years in large vats. They could be steel vats or wood, but what you have is a large volume of liquid and then a small volume around the edge, potentially of wood that might let some air, including oxygen and nitrogen, into the wine. The air, when it mixes with the wine, the oxygen will oxidize the wine and sort of stabilize it and keep it from wanting to turn. And plus, having all that alcohol helps too. But usually, this is going to be aged for about 2 to 3 years in vat or barrel. I'm going to read what's on the back here for you. Since 1820, Graham's has been producing finest ports in the heart of the Douro Valley. Graham's Ruby is rich and full-bodied, with generous aromas of red fruits and flavors of blackberry. A fully mature wine that's perfect to enjoy at any time. This and most of the ports, if they've been opened, and if you look at my previous video, I show you how to open a bottle of port, they will stay good for a couple of weeks if you just put that stopper back in them. That's because they've had already a lot of exposure to air, and so they're not going to oxidize much more. And you can drink these at room temperature if it's cool room temperature. Some folks like to put a bottle in the typical American household. If it's a warm time of year, you might want to put it in the fridge for 15-20 minutes and just chill it down a little bit, down into the low 50s Fahrenheit. The next one we're going to talk about is tawny. Ruby and tawny, right? Used to be kind of popular ladies' names in the U.S. Ruby is going to be ruby red. Tawny is going to be a little bit more of a brown color. The tawny ports are usually aged in smaller barrels, and maybe 5 years of aging before they bottle this. The oxidation, the smaller barrel means that there's a lot more contact of wood with the liquid, a lot more ability for the air to come through the barrel and affect the liquid. It makes it browner. It yields a nuttier flavor and a sort of a caramelly flavor. We'll take a look at this as we get going on a little bit more. But again, marketing. Go into your place where you buy your wines. You can ask somebody, if they've got a recommendation, and if they're honest and they don't know, hopefully they'll tell you they don't. But before you even ask, turn the bottle around. Graham's Fine Tawny. Since 1820, Graham's has been producing the finest port in the heart of Douro Valley. Graham's Tawny is an elegant wine with aromas of fruit balanced with elegant flavors of spice and raisins. Served chilled with dried fruits or creamy desserts. This is great with pie. It's great with cheesecake. And if you see this dog's nose over here, the dogs have just been turned loose from upstairs. No dogs were harmed in the filming of this or recording of this video. So they're down here just saying hello. It's a little too early for their dinner. So we've got the ruby, we've got the tawny. That's the great differentiation between ports, the red and the brown. What we've got next is going to be talking about vintages. A vintage means a few different things. One is it's a single year and when wine was vinted. The tawny and the ruby, when I say that they age for maybe 2 to 3 or 3 to 5 years, everything in this bottle is going to be blended. It's going to be wine that was aged for 2 years. It's going to be some wine that was aged for 3. It's going to be some that was aged for 4 or 5. And the folks who run the bottling operation, we've got Graham's, we've got Dow's, what they do is blend the wine so that this year's bottle of Fine Tawny is going to taste like next year's and it's going to taste like last year's. They try to get a house style, so they will take wine from different years and blend it together. Then there's another thing that's vintage, and vintage in some cases means that a port grower will say, hey, this was a great year for us in this region, on this one vineyard, on this hillside. Everything from there, just grapes from that year, are going to go into a port. Then they're going to age it for, we might be looking at 2 or 3 years in a vat, and then moving it into the bottle. And for example, I'll say a 2017 would have been released in 2020, and they would tell you, hey, you might want to hold on to this for 5, maybe 10 years before you open it, so that it can fully mature in the bottle and be ready to go. And here's the cuckoo clock, which is telling us it is 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock. Then there's also something called late bottled vintage. Originally, the theory is that wine from a single vintage was put aside and kind of got forgotten about, and so instead of coming to get it after 3 years, they found a barrel that might be 4 years old. And it's like, well, okay, what do we do now? In the case of this late bottled vintage, I'll read it to you. It's 4 years in the vat and then another 4 years in the bottle. And at that point, this late bottled vintage is produced from the finest lots in a single, very good year in traditional style. This means that after 4 years in a cask, an oak cask, the wines are bottled unfiltered, and so that they're going to have a lot of sediment with them to retain their fruit concentration, and cellared for an additional 4 years. It's the all-important bottle maturation which allows this wine to develop outstanding style and complexity, resulting in a deep garnet port with rich mouth-filling flavors of ripe fruit, balanced by notes of black chocolate and peppery tannins. It also tells you that make sure that you lay this bottle down for a few days before you pour it, because if it's been moving around, that sediment will make your wine cloudy. And then they recommend slowly decanting it off so that you leave the sediment behind. That would basically mean putting it into a container that might not have a good lid and that you'd want to drink it pretty quickly. This is, and I'll see if you can see it well, it's a 2009, and it was bottled in 2013. And then it was aged for 4 years, so this was released in 2017. It's now 2025. This has had an additional 8 years of age on it, and I believe that this is a very good candidate that's going to be opened up for Thanksgiving dinner. Today is November 1st, and about 4 weeks from now, that's probably going to be opened. Again, that's going to be a Garnet Ruby type port. Next, we've got the 20-year tawny. And a 20-year tawny, you've got wine that has, on average age, it's going to be 20 years in oak barrels. That long in a barrel means a lot of chance for air to come into the barrel, some wine to evaporate out. They sometimes have to top these barrels off because the high alcohol will evaporate out. And so some of this stuff, it might be 18-year-old, it might be 15-year-old, it might be 25-year-old. They add it all up, divide it out, and that's going to be on average 20 years. This is a real rich, caramelly, nutty flavored wine, and it goes great with desserts that have sort of caramel and nuts with them too. But I mean, you can have it with chocolate also, you know. There's no hard and fast rules. You do what you like and enjoy life. But a 20-year tawny, and if you shop, since these were only in vats for a couple years, basically consider this money. So you took your money and you stuck it in a bank for 4 years, and you would expect some interest and some return. If you took that same money and stuck it away for 20 years, you would expect at least double, maybe 3 times your money based on 4 or 5%. If you're getting that interest, maybe 6%. So if you find 20-year wines, they're going to be much more expensive than 10-year wines, which are going to be much more expensive than just a plain tawny. And last but not least, but actually in a way it's a least, because this is only about 10% of the wine produced in Portugal, and it's only been made considerably less than, I think less than 70 years, is white port. And white port is port that's made from white grapes rather than red grapes. It'll have a bit of a slightly tan color to it because they do let it age for a while, and it'll oxidize a bit. But going back to the back, the last chance for them to market you. The arts of cooperage, making barrels and storing in barrels, aging and blending, passed down our families over 200 years to produce exquisite tawny ports, served chilled within 8 weeks of opening. Now, if you've got a bottle of decent Cabernet, or a bottle of Chardonnay, for goodness sake, it's not going to keep for 8 weeks after you've opened it, even if you would refrigerate it. Ports are very stable, 8 weeks with that one. The white port, and they'll tell you that Dow's has been making wine again for a long time, and this wine is bottled ready to drink. Once open, enjoy within 6 weeks. So, which wines do they consider ready to go? All of these are ready to drink. The only one that I don't have here today is a vintage port. Late bottled vintage is different. It's already been 4 years in the cask and 4 years at minimum in the bottle, and with this one another 8 years since it was released. So this is 16 years from when the grapes were picked, and it's ready to go, and it's probably going to be really delicious. I know for a fact that 20-year Tawny is one of my favorites. That's going to be great. White port, if you don't like the real grapey kind of raisiny flavors that you get from some of these, maybe pick up a bottle of white port. White port is a little bit better chilled than at room temp, and if you go out and look on Pinterest or wherever you find your recipes, you'll find some white port cocktail recipes out there. So here we go. Fine Ruby Tawny, late bottle vintage, 20-year Tawny, and the white. They're good year-round. Most people think of them as a cooler weather drink, fall through the spring. It is true that, with something, these are mostly going to be 19-20% alcohol. Those are kind of nice sipping wines. If you have a larger cup, oh, by the way, I'm going to open up the Tawny so that you can see what the colors are when they talk about it's a Tawny. Again, with ports, this is the official seal showing that it was bottled and sealed in Portugal. And right here, there's a cork on a little stem. So you just take a knife, lay it right in here like this, and just run this around until, there we go. You can see the capsule collapsing there. Like that. Capsule's been cut. You can pop this off if you like. Makes no difference. It shows you the cork. Your stopper, it's actually a stopper. Plastic stopper with a little bit of cork in it. And the Tawny wine will give you sort of a brownish hue if you look at it. It's not truly red. If you have a larger wine glass with a bigger bell on it, it captures the aromas a little bit better. And that tastes a little bit like wet walnuts that you put on over ice cream. Really delicious. A little less, it's softened up more. The Ruby tastes a little more like wine, but these are both about 10 bricks remaining of sweetness of unfermented sugar. And I can't see that well. 10 bricks is about the sweetness of orange juice that you buy from Florida. So The orange juice is going to be way more acidic, but that gives you an idea. This is it's a sweet drink, much sweeter than Moscatos and other things like that, but much higher alcohol. As always, thanks for taking a look. If you've got any questions, please leave a comment, and we will see you on the next one.